Let's talk about grammar. Today I want to tell you about a very important English rule that in Italian works in a completely different way. And that is why this is one of the most common grammar mistakes Italians still make. And if you want to avoid this mistake, and you should, keep watching. Welcome to my channel, io sono Miriam Romeo e se capisci l'inglese ma non riesci a parlarlo come vorresti, then I would love to be your English coach. Make the sound of your English smoother and more convincing with the 5 tips I share in my free pronunciation class. Click on the link in the description box below to watch it. You know how in maths, minus and minus make a plus? Well, that's very logical, and in most languages, or in most languages that I know of, that's how it works. 2 negatives cancel each other out and make a positive. So in English, if you say, I didn't do nothing, it technically means that you did something. This double negative rule, although logical, doesn't exist in Italian, and that is why this is still one of the most common mistakes that Italians make when speaking English. Because Italian, in this respect, is a little bit illogical and strange. In Italian, a double negative doesn't result in an affirmation. 2 negations don't neutralize each other. In Italian, non ho fatto niente is correct. And it's still a negative sentence. Oddly enough, in Italian, if you want to make this sentence negative, you need to have 3 negatives. You need to add another one. Non è che non ho fatto niente. And that means ho fatto qualcosa. But in English, if you say, I didn't do nothing, I didn't, which is did not, that's your first negation, nothing. Nothing is another negation. So they neutralize each other and they become positive. So I didn't do nothing, again, technically means I did something. Minus and minus become plus. So if you want to say the equivalent of the Italian non ho fatto niente, in English you have to choose between 2 options. I didn't do anything or I did nothing. The point is that you can only express the negation once if you want to keep the sentence negative. Let's see other examples. Non c'è nessuno. Again, a double negative in Italian, but non and nessuno don't cancel each other out. They reinforce each other. So it's perfectly fine in Italian. But in English, you can't say there isn't no one here. Can you hear how that's weird and why that doesn't work in English? What you need to say is there's no one here. So you keep the verb in the affirmative form. There's no one here. So you express the negation with no. Technically, you have the other option of expressing the negative form with the verb and saying there isn't anyone here, but you have to remember that the sound rules. So between these 2 options, the first one sounds better and it is preferable. There's no one here. The sound is always the most important thing, and you have to develop an instinct. And that can only happen if you practice a lot. You listen to a lot of English, you speak a lot of English, and then at some point you will start hearing when something sounds good and when something doesn't. So again, there's no one here, there isn't anyone here. They are both technically correct. But in real life, there's no one here sounds better. But again, the point is that you only express the negative form once if you want to keep the sentence negative. Let's see this example. Non ho mai capito niente. In this Italian sentence, we have 3 negatives. Non, mai, niente. And it works perfectly fine in Italian. They reinforce each other and the sentence is negative, and it is correct. But how can we translate this in English without making any mistakes? Without making any mistakes. Without also expresses a negation in some way, and so you combine it with any, not with the word no. Without can be considered the negative form of with, without. So without no mistakes is wrong. You see how often this occurs? Without making any mistakes. The other option you have to ask the question I just asked is to say, how can we translate this in English and make no mistakes? So I removed without, and now I can use the word no, but I have to change the question. I have to phrase it a little bit differently. Let's go back to the question. How can we translate non ho mai capito niente in English without making any mistakes? Again, you can only use one negative word. So you say, I've never understood anything. See what I did here? The verb is in the affirmative form. I have. Never is our negative word. And then anything at the end. I don't use nothing. I use the word anything. I've never understood anything. So I'm expressing the negation, the negative form, with the word never. And that is kind of the strongest word in the sentence. If you pay attention to the sound, to the music of the sentence, I've never understood anything. Never is really strong, is really emphasized and stressed. I've never understood anything. So with just one negative word, we can express the same level of negation that we express in Italian with 3 negative words. And in this Italian sentence, as you can see, 3 negative words still don't result in a positive sentence. You will need to add a 4th one. Non è che non ho mai capito niente. For instance, another example. Non dire niente. In English, you have 2 options. Don't say anything. Say nothing. Naturally, grammar rules are broken all the time by native speakers in some specific contexts and for some reasons. For instance, in some regional accents or when people speak slang, even if the same people know the rule and if they are to write an official document or something, they know what the correct form is, so they avoid it. But when you are a native speaker, you're very flexible with your language. You can play with it. But for non-native speakers, it's better to stick to the rule. Because if you break this double negative rule, it's very likely that it's going to sound incorrect in your accent coming out of your mouth. And this rule, as many others, is often broken when it comes to poetic license. For instance, in the famous Rolling Stones song, I Can Get No Satisfaction. I'm sure Mick Jagger wouldn't use this sentence when speaking. I hope this explanation was useful and clear. I could have made a million examples, but I didn't want this video to be too long. So from now on, I suggest that you start paying more attention to all these constructs when you listen to English. And of course, practice a lot. Practice speaking, because practicing this rule is also a very effective way to practice verb conjugations. Let's say that, for instance, you're trying to say the equivalent of non ho visto niente. In English, you have 2 options. I didn't see anything. I saw nothing. And that really helps in practicing and making these conjugations faster and more automatic. So you avoid making the mistake of saying, for instance, I didn't saw anything. So it becomes easier and faster for you to say things like, did you see? Didn't you see? I saw. I didn't see. So you kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, as English speakers say. Let me know in the comments below if you already knew about this, but more importantly, if you already use this rule correctly every single time, because it's not enough to know a rule. Knowing a rule doesn't automatically mean that you can apply it every single time when you're speaking without thinking about it. Theory without practice is meaningless, is pointless. Now don't forget to click on the link in the description box below to watch your free pronunciation class. And if you want to work with me and you would like to have me as your personal English coach, you can contact me at this email address right here. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.